So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our webinar facilitators, Laura Stewart, who is our Chief Academic Officer, and Joni Mayville, our Senior Director of Product Management. Laura's going to kick it off with an overview of 95% Group, and then Joni's going to share more information about our nonfiction and fiction readables.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm just so delighted to be here with my colleagues, Barbara and Joni. And it's a lovely fall evening here in Chicago. And speaking of fall, I know you're all going to fall in love with our 95 Readables nonfiction series that Joni's going to tell you all about today. And that's what we're really going to talk about. I'm going to set a little bit of a stage here, talking about our whole literacy ecosystem. And maybe some of you use our 95% group products and services. If so, we thank you for that. And thank you for joining us, all of you, tonight to learn more about our readables. We're going to talk a little bit about what the research says about decodable text and how our decodable text is really special, especially our nonfiction series, and how it aligns with our phonics core program. And then Joni's going to dig deep into our nonfiction series so you can see just how exciting this is and also see how it really is effective for use with our students. And you do not want to miss this. At the end of the webinar, we're going to give away complimentary grade level grades 2 through 5 nonfiction readable box sets. But wait, there's more. Everybody's a winner tonight because after we give away the class sets, we're going to offer a QR code so that everybody will get some samples of the nonfiction readables. Jody, isn't that exciting?
I'm excited.
I mean, everybody's a winner. So lovely to have you here. All right. So if you're not familiar with 95% Group, welcome. I want to tell you a little bit about our foundational principles. You know, we do our work with purpose. Our purpose is to unlock the power of literacy for every child. And our mission is to unlock the science, to empower all educators with knowledge and classroom resources and support to transform our readers. And we also have a vision to make sure that all of you that have joined us tonight and everybody has what you need to master and also enjoy what you do as you instruct your students for literacy. Also, we have what I consider a very unique value in what we offer the world, and that's our 195 literacy ecosystem. And that's our suite of instructional resources. Our suite of instructional resources are aligned across all tiers of instruction. Our resources are both evidence aligned and aligned with the research base that we commonly refer to as the science of reading, but also evidence-based. In other words, we have efficacy studies that show that our programs work in real classrooms with real teachers and real kids. And it's all brought together with this cohesive and transformational, what we call our literacy intervention system, and underscored with professional learning. This infographic that you see here is a great way of kind of thinking about this integrated, cohesive tiers of instruction. What you see is in the green band, what we call our Tier 1 Phonics Solution, which is our phonics core program and our wonderful practice component called Sortagories. Our Tier 2 in the blue band is our PLL, our phonics lesson library, integrated with our literacy intervention system. That's our Tier 2 phonics solution. And then what you see in the yellow band is our 95 WRAP Tier 3 literacy solution. And what you see is that they're all integrated, and we offer increasing time, intensity, but focus of instruction as you move up the tiers. At the very foundation, the foundation of all we do is strong professional learning. Now, where do the readables fit in? Well, the readables, our decodable text, are going to fit into both our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 solutions. So as you see what Joni's going to show you tonight, these nonfiction texts are going to be appropriate for the grades in our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 levels of instruction. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joni so she can explain more and you can dig in deep into the 95 readables. Take it away, Joni.
Thank you so much, Laura. I first want to start by welcoming everybody, and I also want to welcome especially, it looks like we have lots of my fellow desert dwellers out there. I see lots of folks from Arizona, which is where I'm sitting right now in Peoria, Arizona, kind of up by the State Farm Stadium. So welcome to everyone, but just wanted to give a special shout out to my Arizona educators that I see on this webinar. So I'm excited to introduce you to the 95 Readables, although the 95 Readables are not new. We've had a fiction series out there in the market and have gotten tremendous feedback from both teachers and students on these chapter books that are really what they say. They're readable. They have a decodable feel to them and amazing graphics and great storylines. But because they were so popular, we've opted to go ahead and create a nonfiction series for grades 2 through 5. So my goal is to be able to allow you to see how amazing this 95 Readable series are for grades 2 through 5. And I hope that you can see how these chapter books are accessible and engaging, and you'll want to pick some up for your classroom. So first I want to start out with the why. So why is decodable text so important? And we know that decodable text is important because it does give students a chance to apply the phonics skills that they're learning in an authentic way. So rather than teaching those skills completely in isolation, which we need to do up front, but we need to give them that practice in an authentic way within text to be able to build that automaticity. So we know that the more students practice reading, that the more confident they will become. And I know just from experience, seeing that confidence in the students really, really helps support their love of reading, helps them be a little more daring with their reading, and then they really want to show it off to their friends. And so we hope that this Readable series will be something that they will be able to enjoy with their friends in a confident way. And so that's really the true magic of decodable text. It's really that bridge between instruction and then that sense of independence and being able to read on their own, building that confidence. So it also is really about the right text at the right time. So we know that research tells us that in order to help students become strong readers, they must have access to high quality text that actually supports what they're learning at each phase of development. It grows in a progressive way. So we also know that for students who are still developing decoding skills, practicing the new and previously taught skills in a cumulative way is what really helps make that learning stick and builds that proficiency. As students then continue to build on that proficiency by acquiring larger numbers of skills, the text should gradually get more challenging, giving them a chance to really stretch their reading abilities. And so at every step along the way, students need to be exposed to rich literature, informational text, new vocabulary, and then this will hopefully eventually progress them to being able to read text independently. And something that I failed to mention is that read aloud piece. And you will find that these readables, although meant to be read independently, they are the nonfiction really is really fiction and nonfiction is rich enough that you could participate in a read aloud model with these as well if you chose to. But overall, the 95 Readables really it does provide that right text at the right time. So what exactly are 95 Readables? They're grade level book sets. Each set has about 5 to 6 titles. Grades 2 and 3 both have 6 titles. Grades 4 and 5 have 5 titles, and there's 6 copies of each of those titles in the set. The books are interrelated, but they're not independent, which means that students can pick and choose, or actually teachers can really support students in where they need to go in that book to be able to reinforce that learning that they are presently acquiring and reinforce that previous learning as a way to practice the skill, which means they don't necessarily have to read the entire book to be able to practice the specific skill that they need to. The 95 Readables pair effectively with any Tier 1 ELA curriculum. However, if you do have the 95 Phonics Core Program, which is our Tier 1 phonics solution, the word study for each chapter strategically aligns with the lessons in each grade level scope and sequence. So of course, both the fiction and nonfiction series are engaging and fun, so students will look forward to reading them. But you can see an image here of how they're packaged. which is in a box set. And then this happens to be the third grade series, which we will dive into a little bit more in a bit. So although these books, as I said, could be used with any core program, the visual here represents our kindergarten through fifth grade progression of skills with our 95 phonics core program. We've specifically highlighted in the colored bars, grades 2, 3, 4, and 5, since those are what align with this particular 95 Readables series. And what I'd like for you to do is we're going to dig in just a little bit. You can see how it progresses. But if you take a look at grades 4 and 5 as an example, our Readables series would follow the same progression of skills. So in the earlier books, they all cover the 6 syllable types, but in the earlier books, they will be focused more on single syllable, building into that multi-syllable reading. And as I mentioned before, all of the books are cumulative, so they may be learning closed syllable type, but they're going to then also recognize those single syllable closed words as well as they're reading. So it really helps support that learning will stick. And then here's a more laser focus on the scope and sequence for the PCP, which is the Phonics Core Program for fifth grade, which is on the left. You can see that on the left, we have highlighted lesson 4 in the core program, which focuses on single syllable vowel R syllable pattern. And then on the right is the sequence for the grade 5 book series, Readables series, and you can see book 1, chapter 3 of the 95 Readables aligns perfectly with that. So in each of those teacher companion guides that will come with the series, you will have an outline that follows this. So if you have 95 Phonics Core Program, you know exactly where to go in the series. If you don't have 95 Phonics Core Program, that's okay. We have explicitly listed how the progression goes so you can align it with your current program. So essentially, the 95 Readables is the aligned application that will complement the instruction of your Tier 1 program. Although, as a former teacher, I could see these books fitting anywhere. They could fit into your small Tier 1 differentiated groups, maybe a literacy center where students could do some paired reading. You will also see in the teacher guide that there are some reproducibles that you could also place in a literacy center to be able to support the comprehension piece. They could also be utilized to reinforce a skill that you've taught in your intervention block. So really the possibilities of the 95 Readables in the classroom are endless. We know we never have enough decodables in our classroom. So in grades 2 through 5, there is both a fiction series and a nonfiction series. And so this is a quick overview of the fiction series where they're designed just to be fun and relatable. The themes will really resonate with the students. And I'm going to take a deeper dive into what the themes of those are in just a moment. The nonfiction series, they're accessible and content rich. It really reinforces the grade level science topics, some vocabulary, and some higher level comprehension questioning and strategies that align with the standards. So now I'm going to dig in a little bit for each grade level so you can kind of get an understanding of what each of the books will be about. And so I'm going to give just a quick synopsis of each of the books because the stories and the content is pretty spectacular. So in the next 2 slides, I will go ahead and represent the grades 2 through 5 books. So first I'll start with grade 2, and we begin with the fiction series, which is called Yip All Over the World. Yip is actually a golden retriever. It's Ben's dog, and he goes missing. And so Beth manages to find a crystal ball that allows him to keep track of Yip. And he gets to see that Yip gets to take some amazing adventures all over the world. So think that your students are going to be learning about different parts of the world through Yip's adventures. So then Yip meets someone new from all different parts of the world. And so we get to see then finally how do Yip and Ben reunite in the end? The second grade nonfiction series is called Wild Neighbors, Exploring Animal Habitats. And in this series, the students will explore the world's most amazing ecosystems, from deserts to the deep blue sea to the polar regions of the world. And students will become wildlife experts as they read all about how the animals of those different habitats survive and thrive. So then we move on to grade 3. Our fiction series is Simon the Magic Cat. And at the beginning of this series, we get to meet a magical cat named Simon. And throughout the series, Simon encounters 4 different characters and proposes a trade, something that is special to them for a flashy, shiny new toy. But the characters soon realize that new things don't always hold the same value as memories. So think about how so many of our students are so into their things, and this kind of teaches that lesson that maybe things aren't the most important thing that we should be looking forward to. So I love the little underlying messages that these books teach. So in 3rd grade, the nonfiction series is Mysteries of Matter, and we're actually going to take a little deeper dive into that series in just a bit. It's exploring properties and the changes of matter. And this will basically, students will learn about solids, liquids, and gases, how materials change, and what makes them sticky, slimy, strong, and stretchy. Who doesn't love sticky, slimy, strong, and stretchy in 3rd grade? So we're going to learn about mixtures and chemical changes, and then students will discover how matter shapes the world. So very applicable to our 3rd grade science topics. Now in grade 4, we will have a fiction series, The Midnight Circus. It follows a group of young characters as they navigate challenges related to shyness, fear, and self-doubt. So through magical and unexpected adventures, they learn valuable lessons about courage, friendship, and self-discovery. So important for our students as they transition from those elementary grades to middle school. And then for the nonfiction series, it's Nature's Power, Forces of Earth. So they will learn all about Earth and all of the natural happenings that weather forces, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, wildfires, wildfires, and tornadoes. And we know that these books are certainly going to engage our 4th graders with all of the great facts that they will learn about that. And then 5th grade, fiction, Storm of Feelings. So this is about Maya, who's experiencing a storm of feelings after a big loss at her track meet. So who hasn't experienced loss or not making a team? This really will talk about how she's able to persevere. And then she's, with help of her friend, she learns the importance of self-discovery and embraces the uncertainty of the future. And then the nonfiction series Beyond the Sky, Earth, Moon, and Stars, learning all about the solar system, how Earth's movement creates day, night, and seasons, as well as the moon's phases, learns about the tides, stars, planets, everything about outer space. So kids are going to certainly want to gobble that one up. So I'm going to pause for a quick minute before I talk about the teacher's guide. Laura, do we have any questions that I might be able to answer?
Sure. Well, first of all, one of the things that several people have asked about, and I just want to clarify. So some people have asked about, and I just want to refresh people's memories. So we do have, for our K1 students, we have a series called Decodable Duos that are just for our K1s. And those are tightly aligned with our phonics core program in K1. What Joni's showing us tonight are we have both fiction and nonfiction for grades 2 through 5. And that's our readable series, fiction and nonfiction, for 2 through 5 that align with our PCP, Phonics Core Program, grades 2 through 5. So now we have this entire suite of, cumulatively decodable text K through 5. So we have the whole suite. Now, what Barbara and I have done is we've put links in the chat for the Decodable Duo books for those of you who might be interested in K1. Joni, one thing a couple people have asked is just refresh our memory now. How many texts are there in the readable series? Do they go
Yes.
the entire year? Like how far through the year do they go? Just refresh our memory.
Perfect. Yeah, so the grades 2 and 3 series has 6 total titles in the
Hi.
set, and each title has 6 books. So it could be used with a small group of students, it could be used in a literacy station, it could be used in a lot of different ways to where with 6, although you could buy multiple sets enough so every student in your classroom could enjoy a book at the same time as well. So lots of options that you could use that for. And then for 4 and 5, there are 5 titles with the same 6 books each. So I hope that answers the question of how many books come with that.
Okay, I think that
Yep,
does.
perfect. And something else, just want to throw this in there as well. We do have 95 readables as well for 6 through 8th grade as well. These
Yes,
are more
thank
meant
you.
for intervention.
Yeah.
They're meant more for those students who are still really struggling with decoding. But the same engaging stories. We do only have a fiction series for those at the current time. So
Thank you for that, Joni. Thanks for
yeah.
the reminder.
Yeah,
Great.
and those are great as well.
Yeah, and somebody mentioned
Oops, too
the
far.
quality, the high quality of these books. And Karen, you're absolutely right. These are incredibly high quality. They're beautifully illustrated. The just the quality of the manufacturing of these books, it's very high quality. They are, they're real books. Kids know the chapter, they're chapter books for kids. And so kids are really engaged with these texts. They're not babyish, they're not flimsy. So there's just so much about them that really draw kids in.
Yeah, agreed. And
Mhm.
I love the way that they are, I keep using that word accessible.
Yeah.
So really, you will have readers who are proficient who will gravitate to these just because they are so engaging, and the photography in them is outstanding. And then, of course, you will have your readers who may still be not as confident with their decoding skills, be able to pick these up and feel successful with them. That's what I love about it. It's really
Yeah.
kind of those books that are kind of even the playing field for all students in the classroom, really.
It's so true. I mean, I always think about, and this is from someone who did a study on decodable texts, and she said that, especially in the early grades, decodable texts are like training wheels. They gradually come off. I think of these books as bridges. They're like bridges to chapter books. Like they are chapter books, but they're bridges to more complex text.
I
Um,
love that. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah,
That is a really good way to think
mhm,
about them.
yeah,
One of the things that is super cool with these 95 decodables or 95
readable.
readables
Yeah,
is that they each of them come with each series comes with their teacher's guide.
yes.
So if you choose to use them as more of an instructional component of your tier 1 or intervention or small group, or even literacy station, the teacher's guide comes with all kinds of great instructional components for you, such as fluency routines, comprehension questions aligned to each chapter. And these are not just right there questions. I was looking through them and you'll be able to see an example of them. They really are thoughtful questions that really help students. We know that we've got some readers who may be struggling with text, but now we've got this text that they can read and start really working on that reading response, writing, citing evidence, and I'll show you what that looks like. But there's a vocabulary guide in there for you, scaffolding suggestions, like I said, the written responses, and then reproducible graphic organizers. And I'll be able to show you that here in a moment as we get to our samples that I will project. So here I'm going to walk you through a sample of book 3 from the 3rd grade series. This series has 6 different titles, all about the mysteries of matter. This is book 3, which is called Mix It Up. And it teaches students all about mixtures and solutions. And we're actually going to dive into chapter 1, which is called Mixtures. So as I flip through the pages of this chapter, you'll notice the vibrant photography that is meant to really visually excite the students as they read. Um, So that is something when we presented these, the first time we presented these internally, that was like the ahs and woos over the photography that is present in these books was really fun. So at the beginning of every chapter, there's what we call a phonics guide, which includes lists of sample words from the chapter, and the words are categorized by phonics focus. There's a section often for high frequency words. There may be decodable high frequency words, irregular high frequency words. It really depends on where in the series you are. Teachers and students can use these word lists to practice decoding habits and be introduced to irregular or unfamiliar words before they start reading. Because taking that time before reading to prepare will really help support their accuracy as they're reading through the chapters. Something that I very much appreciate about the readables is that the subject and content is very relatable. So here we're talking about matter and we're talking about mixtures. What better thing to show as an example of a mixture than cereal? We know all kids have a background in having some type of cereal. And so being able to relate to the subject area and understand what it's talking about as it's explaining something that is a little bit more abstract will help the students really understand that concept. So as I mentioned before, reading decodable text that is cumulatively designed reinforces previously taught skills so that learning sticks. And the 95 Readables was written to ensure students will continue to practice those earlier skills in the sequence. It builds confidence and proficiency. And as I said, it really helps support that solid acquisition of the skills. As expected with decodable text, students will apply new learning by reading words within the chapters that follow specific patterns. So in this example, the focus of this chapter is long vowel silent E. So we see that they will experience not only some old previously taught skills, but then they've got their pattern words built into the text. So throughout the chapters, there's fun facts that are highlighted as to deepen that learning and help students stretch their comprehension. For students who might need a little extra support, there is the option that the teacher could read those aloud to the students. Both the fiction and nonfiction texts are written to serve as models for students' writing. We know we are always looking for those exemplars so students can transfer that into their writing, and the author has intentionally used transition words, clear organization, and strong structures. So those techniques that the author uses, students can observe and then emulate in their own writing. So the nonfiction pieces are factually accurate, but the word that I keep coming back to is accessible. So I've actually highlighted a little piece of this chapter to show you just how accessible it can be and how it's really taken a concept that's very abstract and simplified it for the students. So they've been learning about mixtures in this chapter. They talked about, they created a mixture, they talked about creating it, but they talked about how in a mixture, things don't combine with something else. They stay their own structure. So for instance, if you have cereal that has marshmallows and chocolate chips and coconut, those are all going to stay marshmallows, chocolate chips, and coconut. So then close to the end of this chapter, we see here is the main question for testing if this is a mixture. Can you still see each ingredient? For example, can you pick out the marshmallows or the chocolate chips if you want to? So it really ties it back to helping them in a very practical way understand a concept that could be rather abstract if you were reading a traditional nonfiction, non-decodable type text. So here's an example of the teacher guide. These guides mirror the student's experience and provides you as the teacher everything you need to support the instruction. So I'm going to dive into the chapter that we just looked at, which was book 3, Mix It Up. I'm sorry, this is the actual companion for the entire series. But as we go through it, we can see we start with a vocabulary guide. And I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit so you can actually see what this vocabulary guide offers. So it provides some before reading, during reading, and after reading activities and strategies you can do with your students to help really reinforce that learning of the vocabulary. So I'm going to take a minute just so you can read through a couple of those activities that are recommended for this particular series. I did cover up prematurely the vocabulary words. So the vocabulary words are actually listed in the teacher's guide as well, separated by chapter, and then the page number is referenced as well. So if there is a particular vocabulary word you want to reinforce with your students, you know exactly where you can find that in the book. And it provides the definition for that vocabulary word as well.
You know what's nice about this, Joni, is these are replicable, repeatable strategies.
Absolutely.
So these are not just, memorize this meaning of this word. Like these are actual word building strategies.
Yep. I agree 100%. And can be used not only with readables, but in, your content area
Yeah,
classes and in a lot of different ways.
that's right.
So then we've got comprehension questions that are separated by chapter, and also provides the teacher with some response to reading strategies. So how are you teaching that strategy? So this happens to be main idea and key details. How are you going to teach that strategy? And then it also provides you with some collaborative type work on how you can have them think, pair, share, and do more of an oral discussion versus maybe a written response. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the chapter questions for mixtures that we just saw. And like I said, they're not just right there questions. These are the students really need to dig back into the text, which we want them to continue to practice that. Because that's really it's really what they're going to do moving forward through middle school and high school. So you can see here it explains the main idea of the text is what the text is mostly about. So then it asks, what is the main idea of the chapter? Describe what is a mixture, and I love this. Use examples from the chapter to support your response. Don't we want them citing from the actual text to provide that definition and describing what mixture is? How can you tell whether something is a mixture? Okay, so this is really, you got to dig in there now. I got to remember, how can I determine something is a mixture? What did they tell me in that chapter? How did the fun facts in the chapter connect to the description of the mixture in this, or I'm sorry, yes, the mixture in the second paragraph. So this again, remember I told you that the fun fact is really to expand their comprehension. So this is taking it to that next level where they're trying to make connections between different parts of the text. So just really thoughtful questions that can be used. I could see this, like I could see putting this in a literacy station while I'm doing small group of students that are needing to learn a specific phonics pattern. Maybe like if you have our phonics lesson library, it's our tier 2 intervention program. I could sit at a U table with students doing my phonics lesson library tier 2 intervention while I know my students are reading the 95 readables and participating in some quality comprehension work as well.
I think the other thing that's important to remember too, Joni, is that we devised these, we created these so that teachers have a lot of different choices.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't really designed for teachers to just march through every single one of these. It's really for teachers to think about what are your standards, what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish, and also differentiation. What might you be doing with different groups of students? So there's a lot of teacher choice in these options for instruction and for practice.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We did
Yeah.
have a question. Oh, I'll let you
Yeah.
finish this piece. Then we did have a question. So,
Okay, sure. I think we're coming to an end on this. This might be actually the last page of our teacher guide.
okay.
So kind of the piece de resistance. We know we love our students to work in graphic organizers. It really helps support all of our learners and really helps them organize their thoughts. So what I love about this is this particular one has a graphic organizer that can be reproduced for students to pinpoint that main idea and then those key details that can support that. And then they're going to use that graphic organizer to write a written response. Which is really, it's really taking that information in a note style and composing a very thoughtful reading response using that. And then notice down at the bottom, there is opportunity for you to provide scaffolds for those students who maybe are not ready to write a paragraph on their own or a few sentences on their own. We've provided that stem to help support them.
You know,
Right. Love
I
to take questions.
Joni, I love that so much that we
Yeah.
provide those scaffolds for teachers as well. That's really important. So one of the questions was, well, first of all, let me just elevate something that Andrea Young, thank you for being here, Andrea. She said, you know, the text could be introduced in small group, then released for practice in literacy centers, and after that in independent browsing boxes. Thank you for that suggestion, Andrea. So we had a question about are the books aligned with any other leveling system? So Joni, you want to tackle that?
Yeah, sure. They are readable. And I like that we chose the word readable because what we've done is um, we've controlled it for some decodability, but we also have ensured two things. There is that cumulative piece where they're going to continue to see those patterns spiral throughout the chapters and throughout the books that they've already learned. Plus, we've provided a little stretch opportunity for them where they may be just learning closed syllables, but they may encounter a couple multi-syllable words that are closed pattern or really help to push their decodability and that decoding habit to the next level. We have not; these are not Lexile leveled.
Mhm.
They are strictly controlled for the cumulative phonics focus, the current where it falls in the scope and sequence as far as what the actual word study focuses, whether it be in our in our lower grades, it's going to always be that phonics focus. As we get into grades 4 or 5, we even build into that morphological focus.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
they're learning some of those Greek and Latin roots. Latin roots and Greek combining forms that are so important and very high utility. So no, this is just strictly aligning to a phonics focused scope and sequence. Is there anything you can add to that, Laura?
You know, I would say that, you know, in general, we know, you know, from the research base of the science of reading, kind of the simple to more complex phonetic elements, which include, you know, basic phonics, but also moves into multi-syllable, syllable patterns, and as well as morphological elements, as well as Greek, Latin, Anglo-Saxon roots. There is kind of a generally accepted sequence that we go through from simple to more complex. So we have that laid out in our phonics core program. We have that in our scope and sequence. And that's really what our readables, our decodable duos and our readables really follows that scope and sequence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
for sure. And also let's see if we have another one. Oh, somebody mentions that they really appreciate the several options for differentiation. So as teachers, they
Mhm.
don't have to do that. Um, we've had several people ask for the handout and will they get the recording? Yes and yes. All right, I think that pretty much wraps up our
Good.
questions.
Okay. And
Oh,
please keep, yeah.
any plans to do nonfiction at the first grade level? That was
Oh,
another
wouldn't that
question.
be awesome? Yes. You know, I'm sure it is not currently on the roadmap, but I would imagine that as popular as our decodable duos are, and if you are not familiar with them, I would check them out. As popular as they are, I'm sure we will be coming out with another series down the road and would hopefully like to think of those as a nonfiction series because I think that
Yes.
we're going to get a lot of people interested, especially with this 2-5 nonfiction series.
Yeah, and I do want to reiterate, thank you, Carla, for that response. She says, you know, she's seeing a trend away from leveling systems and more focus on a phonics scope and sequence. That's absolutely right. And that's really
Yeah.
what our, what the research base that we follow has really yielded that understanding. And so we continue at 95% Group to follow that dynamic body of research, and it is indeed dynamic body of research called the science of reading. And we will continue to do so as we develop our products. So you can count on us to continue to do that.
Just coming back to, because I know there were questions about how does this come? Well, here are an example of what your box sets might look like. And of course, they do come in a really sturdy, great bookshelf container that you can store them in. And they have labeling on the spine so you can easily see what you're grabbing and how to group them. But they are available in box sets. Again, grades 2 through 5 is what we're talking about now with the 95 readables. And each set includes both fiction and nonfiction titles. And I shouldn't say they come together. Each set, you would buy a series of fiction and a series of nonfiction, or one or the other. They don't come together. As you can see here, if you bought the fiction set, you would get the teacher's guide and these 5 titles that are shown here with 6 books each. If you bought the nonfiction set, you would get the teacher's guide, the 5 titles that are shown here, and the six copies of each
Of
title.
each one. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I hope I made that clear.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's clear. And to see the picture, Joni, I think that always helps us.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Good.
So we're
Um,
ready for other questions if there's other
Well, I
questions.
think so we had a couple questions. Well, first of all, a comment. Amy says these books give a way for older students that may struggle with decoding to gain content and practice decoding skills. That's exactly right. They're that bridge, Amy. You're exactly right. That bridge to more complex chapter books. And as I shared a comment earlier that for many of our kids, this gives them, and Joni uses the word accessible, an accessible way for them to get into very grown-up books with grown-up content that also gives them the confidence that they need to have those incremental steps of success that allow them then to persevere when they get into more challenging text. When kids have those incremental steps of success, then it will propel them forward when they get to more challenging. One of the questions we had is about printable and downloadable. Joni, I don't know if you want to comment about.
Yeah. Yeah, at this time, we do not have do not have them available for printable or downloadable. Just
Yeah,
that can't,
yeah.
yeah.
And
I can't, like,
I
you know what
know.
I'm thinking.
And
Books in hands.
we made that very conscious decision
Yeah.
because we want our kids to have these books in hands. So that was a conscious decision on our part to do so. Yeah. Question, if a school is considering decodable books, would you recommend these for intervention students that follow the lesson library and/or for following the classroom core?
Absolutely.
Yeah, either one,
Absolutely.
right? I
Yes,
mean,
both.
yeah, either one. Because remember at the beginning, I showed that pyramid. These books you can use them in tier 1 sequence or tier 2 sequence because that's the same sequence. The scope and sequence for our PCP or our PLL is the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
like Amy made a really great comment. It makes it not so obvious if they struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Because like I said, all the students in your classroom are going to gravitate to these, the
Mhm.
pictures, the content. I mean, you're going to have kids talking about, did you read this book? And it's going to be nice for your students who are not feeling as confident grabbing a chapter book off the shelf to be able to reach over and grab that, watching, another student who they know reads voraciously, so I get chills when I think about it. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Now they're not available in single copies, right, Joni? These are just available in multiple sets?
No, you can
You
buy
can
the
get them in single.
titles in
Okay.
sets of 6. So you can't buy them one little
Yeah.
singletary, but
Right.
you could buy sets of 6. So for instance, if there was one particular title or you sent them home
Got it.
and you
Okay.
didn't get them back,
You
you
can't, but
could get another.
you can't buy a singleton.
No, you can't buy a singleton,
Okay.
but you can buy one title within a set.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Yes.
And here we have, you can scan this QR code or use that URL to access your free 95 Readables nonfiction samples. So we're going to leave that up there so everybody has a chance to access your samples tonight. And if you'd like to reach out, here's our wonderful account executives. Find your state and write down the name and the contact information for your account exec if you would like to reach out to them directly to learn more about readables or maybe the decodable duos. We had a lot of people asking about those K1 decodable books, decodable duo sets, which are really special and quite unique. Also, here's my contact information and Joni's contact information. Thank you, Joni. Thank you, Barb. And thank all of you for joining us tonight. We know that you're very busy as educators, and of course, we just really honor and appreciate the work that you do every day. And it's really, truly a privilege to support you in the work that you do. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.